The wind held a memory out here. It whistled through the skeleton of the barn, as if it were searching for someone who hadn't answered in years. Coldrick sat on the creaking porch of a house far too large for one man. The planks beneath him had been weathered by time and sun, fading into shades of grey. His hound, a patched old thing now drifting toward the haze of age, lay curled by his boots. Both man and dog had grown into the quiet, like vines twisting around a forgotten gate. 10 years had passed in silence, not because he had lost his voice, but because it had nowhere left to go. His gaze drifted over the world in fragments. A sparrow hopping along the fence, dust spiraling around a forgotten barrel, the shadow of the porch stretching lazily across the steps as the day aged. He never looked at the road, not directly. That was where memories came from, and memories made more noise than voices ever could. But that late September morning, the wind changed. It came from the south, carrying with it an unfamiliar mix of smoke, perfume, fear, and something floral. Calder didn't stir, not when the sound of hooves began to thud in the distance, not even when the gate groaned. 2 riders appeared, their horses little more than skin and bone, but still obedient. The first was tall, a straight-backed woman, maybe 27. Her black hair was braided tightly, and her eyes were sharp enough to make a rifle seem dull. The second was younger, a few years behind her companion. Smaller in build, with hollowed cheeks, whether from hunger or grief, it was hard to say. She clutched a satchel against her chest, as though it contained a newborn or a secret. They stopped at the porch. Neither of them dismounted. "You called a rook?" the older woman asked. He didn't blink, didn't nod, just shifted slowly in his rocker, the motion as sluggish as syrup spilling across a tin plate. "We heard you don't talk," she continued. "That suits us just fine." The younger woman glanced around, nervous. "You got a barn?" He didn't respond, but his hound stood up, turned, and padded off toward the back pasture. The 2 women exchanged a glance, and that silent communication was all the invitation they needed. Curiosity crept around the edges of the ranch like frost before a hard freeze. Calder watched them disappear behind the house, then stood with deliberate slowness. They made their way into the barn without a word. He saw them as they started a fire inside the stone hearth, a hearth that hadn't seen smoke in years. They carried bundles, 2 bedrolls, a crate, something wrapped in canvas that they handled with far too much care to be anything ordinary. That night, the fire's glow flickered through the cracks in the barnwood, like an ember caught behind ribs. Calder didn't sleep much. He never did. At dawn, he poured himself black coffee and left it at the barn door. When he turned, the older one stood behind him, not startled, not thankful, just, "Unia," she said. "That's my name." He met her eyes, green like pine boughs, soaked in rain. She nodded towards porch. "You want to know why?" He didn't nod, but something in his stillness leaned forward. "We came from the Hollow Hills commune," she said. "Preacher man named Giles promised said peace, offered chains." Calder's eyes. That place was known in Rumadot. A religious holdout turned halfway to. The law never reached far into those hills. "My sister and I took something when we left." She tapped her proof, names, ledgers. Her voice dropped. "They'll come for us. We just need a time. Silence. A place with a man who don't gossip." A pause, you still willing? Calder turned back towards house, the lines of his shoulder straightening, as if he just carried something heavy and invisible. He left barn without a word. That was in for 3 days. He watched them from the porch, watched Uni hammer with planks to reinforce the barn door, watched her younger sister, Ruthie, kneel in the garden he hadn't touched in 5 years, and coax life from the weeds. They didn't ask for anything more, didn't speak unless necessary. Ruthie left him coffee one morning. She whispered as she set it down, "Thank you." He looked up at her. "My name's Ruthie," she said. He opened his mouth, then shut it again. Too late. The words in him were dust, and he didn't trust them to hold shape. That night heckerved again. A little wooden horse. He hadn't whittled since the day he buried his wife. He left it outside Theborn door. The next day, Unia didn't mention it, but when he came round the side of the house, he saw her placing it carefully inside her trunk next to Apostle wrapped in cloth. On the 4th night, he heard Ruthie crying. It was soft, like someone praying to something that never listened. He stepped into Theborn. She sat with her arms around Thatsachil, rocking slightly. "I held her," she whispered. She only lived 2 hours. Her eyes met his. "I couldn't leave her. We buried her under Thecaton wood, behind the hollow church. They don't even know she existed." Called her, walked forward, slowly sat beside her. He didn't touch her. The next morning, Calder fixed the east fence, then the gate, then the Atro pump. His hands remembered use, and it felt like something inside him had started breathing again. The wind changed again. That night the hound growled low, hair rising. Calder stepped off the porch and saw them. 3 riders, shadows against the moon. Unua's already outside, rifle in hand. Ruffy behind her, lips trembling. "They found us," Unia said. Calder looked at her. Then, at the barn, he walked toward it and returned with a long case, his sold repeater. He hadn't touched it in 10 years. He opened the case slowly, like Hugh was greeting a grave. "The writers, called out, 'You're harboring thieves, Rook. Hand him over. We'll leave you breathing.'" Calder stepped down into theatre. His first word in a decade came like thunder swallowed in velvet. "No." The horses pawed nervously. "You sure, old man?" he said. Nothing else. Just raised the rifle. The first man drew. Calder's bullet struck the metal of his belt buckle, sparking, driving him from the saddle with a cry. The second shouted and fired wide. The third spurred forward. Calder took a slow step, exhaled, and shot again. The third man screamed, fell into the dust. Thescond turned and ran, horse bolting Jinto, the brush. Silence returned, broken inly by the clatter of a dropped pistol and the crackling firelight from Theborn behind them. Anunius stared at Calder. "You spoke," she whispered. He looked at her, then Ruthie, then down Ath rifle. "Forgot how loud I used to be," he said softly. Unius smiled. Not fully, just enough to make the dust feel warmer. They buried the bodies at dawn. No prayers, just dirt, and the sound of wind brushing over graves to shallow for forgiveness. Ruthie placed the wooden horse atop one of the mounds. "We won't run any more," she said. Weeks passed. They built a second cabin. Unia helped him dig post holes. Ruthie planted herbs. The porch had threricking chairs now. One morning, Calder found Junior sitting on the steps, oiling her rifle. She didn't look up. "You still don't talk much." He sat busy. "Didn't say I was cured." She glanced sideways. He added, "Just means I know when words matter." A silence fell again. But it was a good one, a shared one. That evening, Ruthie Calder took it from her hands. Their fingers brushed. She didn't pull away. You built this place for one, she said. Still think you want to die here alone? He didn't answer. But that night, he left 2 coffee cups on the porch. At sunrise, both were empty. The wind blew gentler now. Sometimes in the world was quiet enough. Calder would speak only to say what mattered. Fence needs fixing. You rest. I got it. And once, when Unia dropped a plank on her foot and cursed loud enough to wecketh dead, he chuckled. Ruthie looked at him. You laugh now. He shrugged. You brought more noise than I was used to. She leaned her head on his shoulder. Ya won't seen nothing yet. He closed high sighs, breathing in the scent of smoke, earth, and lavender soap. And for the first time in 10 years, Calderic didn't feel haunted by silence. He felt held by it. Some offers don't come with gold. Some come with fire, with danger, with 2 hands full of ash and hope. Some come disguised as trouble and leave behind something close to love. And sometimes a man spends 10 years thinking Ea was buried when he was only planted. Now he bloomed.